Hello, my name is Joe Kramer. I'm a physics teacher and a writer on P3. I'm here to talk to you about lesson 6, which is where we build conservation of momentum as well as doing many other things. This is a beast of a lesson, so we're going to get right into it. First, how we got here. During lesson 5, we figured out that unbalanced forces cause a change in motion that we give a name to. We call it acceleration. And we figure out that road conditions and safety features can both affect the time it takes to stop. So in lesson 6, we're wondering, what if we actually hit something? What happens then? So can we use these same ideas of force, time, acceleration, and apply them to situations where we hit stuff? So this is a 3-day lesson. It doesn't involve a lot of material preparation. Because most of the stuff is in videos. But if you choose to do stuff with real equipment in person with your students, it may take longer to get that stuff working. I will say, I put an asterisk by this 3 days because actually building towards mastery of conservation of momentum may take longer. It could take quite a bit longer. Let's look at why that is. I split this up into 4 main chunks over these 3 days. First, we start by defining velocity as speed with direction, and we study velocity graphs of a collision on a video as a way to understand these collisions. So we figure out that velocity time graphs can tell us details about force actually during the time that the velocity changed. Then we study videos again of a collision between 2 carts. So instead of a car hitting a wall, we imagine what if 2 cars hit each other? And we figure out that force and change in velocity are both equal and opposite for every type of collision that we test. We then use these conclusions to derive conservation of momentum, first as a combined sum of the change in momentum of each object to show that the total change in momentum is 0, and then as a total momentum before equals the total momentum after. Both of these formulations can be useful, so we then try to put them to work. We apply these models to new scenarios that don't involve carts in our classroom. So we look at how they could be useful for shopping carts and trains and other things that we might encounter hitting each other. So we figure out these 3 things: force on 2 carts and change in velocity of those carts are equal and opposite for identical mass. The mass and change in velocity of the 2 carts are related by algebraic models, and this idea of conservation of momentum can be applied to a variety of real-world scenarios. This is what we figure out, but there is so much here. This lesson is truly jam-packed. Some key moments that I want to highlight. First, when we see this video of a cart hitting a wall, we start to analyze velocity graphs, not speed graphs. You'll notice because the car changes direction, the velocity graph goes from positive to negative. And using the mass of the cart, we can predict the force on the cart and then compare this to actual forces. So we have a measured value for the force versus time. And when we compare that to the prediction that we make with our equation, we see that they're not actually similar at all. We predicted a force of 3 newtons, and the peak of this graph is actually 17 newtons. So we try to make sense of that difference. I have found this to be quite difficult, just starting with this graph of something bouncing. So the optional collision introduction, this is the name of a file in the lesson 6 folder, plus slides C1 through C4 at the end of the slide deck can help us introduce velocity time graphs in a way that can make more sense. Depending on what your students' needs are, this optional introduction might be useful for you. So we start with a real crash test. It's kind of exciting to watch. And then we start by looking at velocity graphs of things stopping, reaching 0, before we make it more complicated by looking at bouncing instead. This does take time, but I would argue if your students do need this, then the learning they're trying to do will take way more time if they don't have this strong foundation. So that brings us into day 2, which introduces another cart. Instead of crashing into a wall, we're looking at 2 cars hitting each other, and each cart has a force sensor on it. So we can compare those forces. And no matter what we do, we see, like the graph that you see below here, the forces are always equal and opposite. This is, of course, Newton's third law. I tend to lean hard on this particular definition of force. Force is an interaction between 2 objects, since it helps us understand why Newton's third law is a thing. Like, these 2 forces are measuring one interaction actually between those 2 objects. So of course they're the same. Similarly, when we measure the change in velocity of these 2 identical carts, we see that the change in velocity is the same also. This is only the case when the mass is the same, but we use this to start to build out a more general rule. In part 11 and part 14, we're using that rule to say, like, okay, what if the mass isn't the same? And we use this kind of variation on the simulation that we used in lesson 4. We smash 2 carts together and look at their change in velocity when one has a lot more mass than the other, and we see that they're related in this way. So from this, we derive change in momentum, we define the term momentum, and we create this algebraic relationship for conservation of momentum. So then finally on day 3, after building these hugely important models for conservation of momentum, we next apply these models to some real-world scenarios. So the key that you see here on the left in purple is intended to be used as a student-facing key. So they can use it in class or out class to check their own understanding of how this algebra can look. It's really important to recognize that this skill that we're supporting students to develop here is a tough one. It shows up on the transfer task in the next lesson, so we know that it's important, but we shouldn't necessarily expect that our students will be proficient in the skill of conservation momentum algebra after working through the problems in this packet like once. I've certainly taught rooms where we spend large chunks of class time, like much longer than a day, developing this skill. The teacher edition suggests that we could spend 9 minutes doing this, plus some time outside of class looking at the key. We'll talk more about what this actually means. Like, what does the teacher edition mean by this 9 minutes? Some tips and tricks that I would take seriously doing this lesson. Look at the lesson 7, this should say lesson 7 transfer task, to see where your students are going with this work. Identify for yourself what the most important things that students need to be able to do are. Try not to make assumptions that, like, students need to do a bunch of algebra gymnastics or students need to, like, do a bunch of the same type of problem over and over again. That is not what the transfer task looks like. For example, velocity time graphs are a very powerful tool for sense making around motion, and they are heavily featured on this transfer task. So make sure to emphasize those in students' problem solving. Force time graphs will appear later. This idea that the force that we predict using the relationship that we have is actually an average force and the peak force might be greater. Like, this is something tricky that you might choose not to spend as much time on in service of spending more time on the things that are going to be on the transfer task. I would argue it helps your students a tremendous amount to identify what you actually want to see them do. This is an example of a rubric that I've used with students on precisely this work. And if I'm clear with them that I want them to, for example, draw a relevant system before and after a collision, use multiple types of models to analyze these collisions, to show them that I'm actually valuing this work and grading it, then they understand that it's worth their time. I would also say you want to allow yourself realistic timeline for building those skills. There are some environments where 9 minutes could be enough time to become familiar with those, but most of the time that I've taught physics, I haven't been in those environments. A spicy take here, depending on your specific situation, I think related skills can be leveraged alongside or in place of algebra. So, for example, something that's fleshed out in the teacher guide is rectangle area as mass times change in velocity. The area of this rectangle is the change in momentum of the object. But that change in momentum can look different. It can involve more change in velocity for something that has less mass, or the opposite. Drawings of objects and systems interacting can be really good evidence of what students understand, and they can be useful for solving problems. Part of what you're seeing here on the right is an example of a momentum bar chart. These are not algebraic representations, but they can contain a lot of really important sense making. I've had situations where I basically asked students to draw momentum bar charts with no algebra, and they were able to do the sense making that I needed of them with these bar charts exclusively. Lastly, I'll say again, I love velocity time graphs. I think that they're super useful, and I want my students to understand them. So I emphasize them heavily. Lastly, just some thoughts on how we manage materials. We uncover this idea that velocity can change sign, and that means that something has kind of like bounced off a wall. That's a pretty sophisticated idea. So this definition of velocity, I would argue, includes a graph that looks like this. Next, we uncover these force and motion and momentum relationships. This is another formulation of force, change in velocity, time, and we will continue to look at those in the context of collisions for the rest of the unit. We'll see you again for the transfer task lesson, which is lesson 7. Thanks.